Welcome back to Kurd Zone. My name is Sergio, and I'm your host. Episode number 10. Wow. I'm impressed. I'm patting myself on the back. Anyways, you all know, thank you for listening, by the way, everybody. I appreciate it. And hopefully this particular one, this week's episode, is about boundaries. And so before I get started, you all know what I have to do, my disclaimer. So this podcast may discuss sensitive topics, including CSA. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast discusses experiences of abuse, violence, suicidal ideation, and CSA, which may be distressing to some listeners. The content provided is for informational and educational purposes only, and it is not, I repeat, not a substitute for professional advice. So if you or someone you know needs support, please seek help from a qualified professional or contact your local helpline in your area. Now, this particular week, I thought I would once again talk about boundaries and practicing boundaries. I had somebody make that suggestion about boundaries. They were a little confused. So I thought that's a good idea. So practicing boundaries. So first off, let's start with what is a boundary? So boundary is obviously a line or limit that separates when you are okay with from what you are not. So think of it like a fence with a gate. Everything inside the fence is what you like and want to embrace in your life. Everything outside the fence is what you don't like and don't want to be a part of your life. The best kind of fences have gates that allow room for flexibility in who can come in and go out to honor changing relationships, circumstances, and healing. While rigid fencing can lead to isolation, weak fencing can lead to trespassing. So rigid boundaries. A survivor may have more rigid boundaries because of how severely they have been hurt and betrayed in the past. This betrayal may have come from not only the person or persons who have abused them, but by their loved ones who did not protect or support them, like me. Through these experiences, the survivor may maintain rigid boundaries in order to protect themselves from further hurt and disappointment. Keeping your guard up does serve an important purpose and never needs to be used in certain situations. However, the same unyielding barriers that protect one from danger can also make it more difficult for the survivor to create new relationships, foster trust, and form a network of support. Individuals who have more rigid boundaries often use boundaries to push people away, use boundaries to try to control other people, are not open to hearing others' viewpoints, are overprotective and personal information, aren't willing to appropriately adapt boundaries to different contexts, say no to things simply because they are outside of their comfort zone, and they also seem detached, and they believe their own boundaries are more important than others' boundaries. Once again, that was rigid boundaries. The next one is weak boundaries. On the other end of the spectrum, a survivor may have weaker boundaries because they have come to believe that their boundaries do not matter. The trauma of their abuse may have impacted their level of self-worth and reinforced the belief that their wants and needs are not as important as the wants and needs of others. They may have lost hope that the world includes individuals who will respect and protect them. And while survivors with these weaker boundaries may be more open to connections and relationships, as well as attuned to the needs of others, they're also at a high risk of being mistreated or even re-victimized. So individuals who have weaker boundaries often don't set boundaries for fear that others won't approve. They are controlled by others, people's behaviors and opinions. They accept abuse and disrespect from others because they feel it's what they deserve. Overshare of details of past trauma with others, even new acquaintances. Feel that it's their job to fix everyone else's problem. They don't say no to others, even when feeling uncomfortable or emotionally overwhelmed. They believe others' boundaries are more important, but hesitate to establish their own. And lastly, reinforce boundaries inconsistently or don't reinforce boundaries at all. The third one, and last one, is a healthy boundaries. A healthy boundary lies in the middle of the spectrum. They enable you to hold firm in setting limits that will help you feel secure, while also allowing you flexibility to adjust as circumstances and relationships change. Going back to the analogy of the fence, a healthy boundary allows you to open the gate to new people, friendships, and support systems. So individuals who have healthy boundaries often stand up for personal values and don't compromise out of fear or doubt. Consistently communicate and reinforce boundaries. They are firm but not rigid in reinforcing personal boundaries. They respect their own boundaries and boundaries of others. They develop emotional closeness at a pace that is comfortable and best suits the healing journey. They share personal information appropriately with others. They try new things as long as values aren't compromised. And lastly, they place trust in those who have earned it. It's funny because, reading all of these things, I don't know where the hell I am. I don't think I'm in the rigid or weak. I'm probably in the healthy one, but the last one, it says, place trust in those who have earned it. Well, to some extent, yeah, I guess that's right. I'm usually the type of person that I give you my trust, and then it's up to you to lose it. But in this particular case, when it comes to childhood sexual abuse, I sort of told people in the past, but that's also because I've trusted those who have earned it to be able to open up to my, dark secret. The next item is, how can I set healthy boundaries? So, setting healthy boundaries generally involves one, identifying a relationship or a situation in your life where you may have a boundary that is currently too weak or too rigid. Number two, determine how you would like to change that boundary into something healthier. And three, planning an action to communicate that change. So, what I like to do is have here a couple of examples. One being with the boss, the next one being with a family, and then the last one is with a significant other. So the example one, so let's say you're struggling with the boundaries surrounding your work time. So lately your workload has become heavier and you've had to work on the weekends in order to complete everything on time. A month goes by with no change. You start to notice that spending your weekend working is taking a toll on the family and your emotional health. You realize that your boundaries with work are on the weak end of the spectrum, and you need to adjust towards the center for the sake of your well-being and your family. To do this, you determine what you like your new work boundary to be and how you plan to set that boundary. You lay out the details in a journal. So the new boundary would be something like, while I'm happy to work late during the week, I would rather not work over the weekend if there isn't an emergency deadline. And the action would be, have a conversation with your boss that communicates why I don't feel comfortable working on weekends while I still showing that flexibility. I could say something along the lines of, I understand you have more work that needs to be done. Where would you like me to prioritize my time? So, number 2, this is with family in the area of housework. So, between a full-time job and raising a family, you're feeling high level of stress, especially in regard to the amount of chores that need to get done. And while it would be helpful to have other family members pitch in with these chores, you somehow end up doing all of the work yourself. You realize that the expectation for you to do most of the housework, even on nights when you have worked all day and are exhausted, is starting to take toll on your physical and emotional well-being. You decide that the boundary regarding your time and responsibilities at home is on the weak end of the spectrum, and you would like to change it into something healthier. To do this, you determine that you would like your new boundary to be and how you plan to set that boundary. Again, write in a journal. So your new boundary, says, while I can take a certain chores, such as doing the laundry, vacuuming on the weekend, I cannot continue doing all the chores by myself, especially in the evenings after I've been at my job all day. And the action to that new boundary is have a family meeting where you can explain why you need their help with the housework, especially during the weeknights. Set up a rotation where each family member does the dishes after dinner on a set night during the week. That's a good start. As an example, with my life with my wife, so whoever cooks dinner does the dishes. So, I'm sorry, whoever cooks the dinner, the other does the dishes. And I also, part of my chore in helping in this relationship is I do laundry. And the odd time I will vacuum our home as well. And other things too. I'm not really crazy about, like, for example, cleaning a toilet. However, I know that, my wife doesn't like to do it either. So I will pitch in and do it. Plug my nose and do it. So it's just an example. And the last example, so over the past year, you have been attending therapy and practicing strategies to help manage the trauma of your childhood sexual abuse. Your partner is very supportive and has been doing all they can to help you along your healing journey and be that supporter you need. However, over the past few months, you've started refusing to go on any social engagements, family events, or work functions with your partner because you are worried about becoming triggered. Each time your partner asks if you will go with them to one of these social settings, you say no. And while your partner has been patient and sympathetic, you feel that your boundary may be too rigid and is putting a strain on that relationship. So you decide to adjust the boundary by laying out the following details. Once again, into a journal. So the relationship is significant other, the area, social, and the new boundary will go something like, while I can still very hesitant to attend social gatherings because I'm scared of being triggered, I understand that it's important for my partner that I make the effort to attend certain events, even if it's just for a short amount of time. Now, the action is have a conversation with your partner to discuss your willingness to go to a select number of social events each month, as long as we have a backup plan in case I become triggered. So, for instance, before each event, we come up with an excuse to leave early if needed. So now it's your turn. Number one, I want you to sit, hopefully you're sitting comfortably with a pad of paper, and if you haven't got one, get one. If not, use your phone. All phones have an app called Note, so get that. And I want you to think of a specific relationship in your life and write it down. And number two, next, I want you to think of an area of that relationship or of your life in general that you like to focus on and write that area down. And it could be physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, professional, and last one, sexual. It may also be useful to look at what they call relationship assessments for ideas where new boundaries could be helpful. Number three, I want you to determine where on the spectrum where on the spectrum you feel your boundary is regarding that relationship or situation. Is it rigid? Is it healthy? Or is it weak? And number four, write down a new, healthier boundary that you would like to set. So once again, going back to the examples I've given you, that new boundary. So as the last one said, the spouse felt that his boundaries were a little rigid as far as when they were going out to certain events or work events, so on and so forth. He kept on saying no because of being afraid of being triggered. And so they came up with a plan. We'll go, but if I'm triggered, we got to leave early or leave at that particular time. So I want you to write that down, a healthier boundary that you would like to set. And number five, write down one thing you can do or say to set that boundary. Sometimes this step requires assertive communication to vocalize what our boundaries are. So what do you do if someone does not respect your boundaries? While it is within your power to set and communicate your own boundaries, it is not within your power how others respond to those boundaries. As you establish new boundaries, others may initially push back, question, or provide unsolicited advice. It may take time for them to adjust to that boundaries you've set, especially if those boundaries require significant changes on their end. So remember that it's okay to be both patient and firm as you maintain your boundaries and allow the people in your life to adapt to your needs. Unfortunately, individuals may not always choose to respect and honor the boundaries you've set, even after being permitted the time and compassion to do so. This may also be because they struggle with unhealthy boundaries themselves, or lack of understanding of why boundaries are important. In these instances, remember that their response is not your fault. Rather, when someone dismisses or violates your boundaries after you've clearly and calmly communicated them several times, their relationship may not be conducive to your needs and your healing. And remember, it is not selfish if you decide it may be best to keep that person out of your fence for the time being. If they later demonstrate that their willingness and ability to respect your boundaries, you can always open the gate and allow them back in, on your own terms and on your own pace. If you are concerned about a person in your life who is not respecting your boundaries and are unsure of how to manage the situation, I encourage you to seek the guidance of a mental health specialist or another third party. So practice self-compassion. If you have boundaries at either end of the spectrum, Remember that moving forward or towards the center is a process, the center being healthy boundaries. New boundaries create change, and change can feel uncomfortable at first for both you and for those who will be impacted by the new boundaries. Be patient with yourself, as well as firm and consistent with others. As you set your boundaries one at a time, strive to keep those boundaries in place. As you seek to set and maintain healthy boundaries, you have to practice acknowledgement by identifying the areas in your life where your current boundaries may be too weak or too rigid. Mindfulness by being aware of the boundaries you have set and maintain those boundaries with patience and self-compassion. Last one, aspiration by establishing boundaries with the intention of making changes that will benefit your healing journey and overall well-being. Now, I do have a little bit of time, but anyway, I think this is pretty deep, and I'm sure some of you will replay it over and over again. And so, as we come to the end of today's episode, I once again want to extend my deepest gratitude to each of you for joining me every week on this important conversation about childhood sexual abuse. It is not an easy topic to discuss. I know, I get it. It's not easy for me to constantly be open and talk about things. It isn't. It may sound easy, but it's not easy. And so, by shedding a light on these issues, we always take a step forward on healing and understanding. Just remember that healing is a journey, and it's a long journey, not a short one. So to all survivors listening, your strength and resilience inspires us all. Remember, you are not alone, and there is hope for healing. So let's continue to support and uplift each other as we navigate our individual journeys. Thank you for lending your ears and hearts today, and until next time, take gentle care of yourselves.